I'm just getting set up here real quick. Let's see, I think it's right here. Okay, so we left off at the section in here called the Semites, and it goes through those that are born of Shem. Don't let the Jews fool you currently. Most of them, if not all of them, aren't actually or have any connection to Shem like they claim they do. They don't have any proof of that. When they say that people speaking out against them is anti-Semitic, they have no proof that they're even Semitic. So let's not worry about that too much. But let's get into this. The Semites. The sons were also born to Shem, whose older brother was Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the sons of Eber. Time capsule 2500 to 2400 BC. In the 2500 BCs, the earliest surviving dam in Egypt was found. It's 272 feet thick. Also, stone temples were built at Gargantia, Malta. Egyptians used the sistrum, a metal percussion instrument. The widespread use of axes with sockets for the handle became a thing. In 2450, we saw the first smelted iron in Mesopotamia, and Egyptians making copper pipes. In 2400 to 2250, we found Egyptians using oars to propel large boats, and Ebla, a Semitic city-state in northern Syria. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Meshech. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah the father of Eber. Two sons are born to Eber, one named Peleg, because in his time the earth was divided. His brother was named Joktan. Joktan was the father of Almodad, Shelep, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzol, Diklah, Obol, Abimel, Sheba, Ophir, Havila, and Jobab. All these were sons of Joktan. The region where they lived stretched from Mesha toward Safar in the eastern hill country. These are the sons of Shem by their clans and languages and their territories and nations. These are the clans of Noah's sons, according to their lines of descent, within their nations. From these, the nations spread out over the earth after the flood. Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Babel and its tower. In Genesis 11, 1 through 9. Babel was one of the chief cities in Nimrod's kingdom. We see that when reading Genesis 10, 8 through 10. The term Babel is the Hebrew form of the name Babylon, the city on the Euphrates River in central Mesopotamia. The city has a very ancient past, and it is first mentioned by the Akkadian king Sargon in circa 2350 BC, who according to tradition burned it. Sharkali Shari in circa 2200 BC restored its temple tower. Hammurabi from 1792 to 1750 BC, a king of the first dynasty of Babylon, made it his capital city. Unfortunately, archaeologists have been able to find evidence only as far back as the period of the Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II, 605 BC and later. The rising water table in the area has prevented much research into earlier. How you doing, Ronnie? Into earlier periods. Babel has received much attention over its tower. We see that in Genesis 11, 4 and 5. It likely was a staged temple tower, the distinctive Mesopotamian structure known by the Sumerian term ziggurat. Ziggurats were developed in the 3rd millennium BC at Uruk and Ur in Babylonia, as well as at Nineveh, and consisted of smaller and smaller stages or stories built on top of each other. I'm doing well. How are you? Those who believe the tower at Babel refers to temple ruins from Mesopotamia point especially to Etemenaki, the ziggurat of the Marduk temple in Babylon. A Babylonian text describes it as having a base of 295 feet squared, with 7 platforms over 108 feet high. The top platform had a temple where the god met with humanity. Access was achieved by ramps or stairways. Is that a shoulder shrug? You and Jill's mi Espana. This is my first chronological archaeological Bible. But I've read history alongside the actual biblical text. In Genesis, the tower was never completed. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but okay. In Genesis, the tower was never completed. In Genesis 11:8, that's when God separated the nations. The Etemenaki did not fare much better. It was repaired by the Assyrian king Esarhaddon. Well, then I wish I would have kept that one hidden. It was repaired by the Assyrian king Esarhaddon in 680 to 669 BC, severely damaged in the Assyrian Civil War. 652 to 648 BC, restored again by Nebuchadnezzar the second in 605 to 562 BC. But destroyed by the Persian king Xerxes I in 472 BC. Alexander the Great in 323 BC cleared the area to rebuild it, but died prematurely. Genesis 11, starting in verse 3. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. They then said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. I do ask that we stop with all these inappropriate comments. Unless you have a comment that actually adds something useful, try to hold them. And scared of werewolves, that's absolutely wrong. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. From Shem to Abraham, or from Shem to Abram. This is the account of Shem's family line. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad. And after he became the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. The millenniums. A millennium is a period of 1,000 years. Scholars of ancient history often refer to millenniums or millennia when speaking of time before the Common Era or Christian era. Before the year AD 1. The setting of the Old Testament books from the patriarchs through the prophet Malachi extends from the end of the 3rd millennium BC through most of the 1st millennium. Millennium designation versus the range of dates. The 3rd millennium BC was from 3000 to 2000 BC. The 2nd millennium BC was from 2000 to 1000 BC, and the 1st millennium BC was from 1000 BC to 1 BC. I could read Harry Potter next. I will keep that in mind, but I'm gonna finish this first before I start reading any other books on this. Jesus broke this covenant like 2,000 years ago. None of this DNA crap is relevant. Jews just use it to do whatever they want now. Don't fall for it. Jesus broke the covenant. Well, most Jews aren't even part of the line of Shem. So when they say that we're being anti-Semitic, we have to understand that there's no anti-Semitism that's going on towards them because they're not Semitic. They try to claim it, but there's no DNA proof that they are from the line of Shem. I believe that all the Bible is very much necessary. I don't read Harry Potter. It's witchcraft and demonic. I want to be careful as a Christian calling certain things demonic and heavily witchcraft because in this case, yes, it is a lot of spells, but it's also very much fictional, and it all depends on what you're reading it for. The demons can only have so much power as you allow them to have. As Christ is already, unless you aren't purchased by Christ. If you're purchased by Christ's blood, no demon can actually control you. They might influence you, but that you can't be possessed. They cannot control you. When Arphaxad had lived 35 years, he became the father of Shelah. And after he became the father of Shelah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he became the father of Eber. And after he became the father of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he became the father of Peleg. And after he became the father of Peleg, he lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. Yes, I 100% agree with this. Yes, Jews very often do start the wars. We have to remember that. Yet that doesn't discredit what the Bible said in the Old Testament, for the whole thing is God's history. We don't read these genealogies for the reasons of holding to them. We read them to understand how God worked throughout the entirety of the Bible. I'm a covenantalist, which means that I believe that each covenant revealed more and more truth until Christ revealed the full truth. Um, so I don't want to discredit the Old Testament, but yes, you are 100% right on Jews starting the majority, if not all, the wars. Peleg ever lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he became the father of Ru. And after he became the father of Ru, Peleg lived 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Ru had lived 32 years, he became the father of Serug. And after he became the father of Serug, Ru lived 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And after he became the father of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. That is wild that your brother believes that, because that's not true at all. In fact, most, if not all, the ancient um, church fathers demonized the Jews and even acknowledged that their beliefs are from the devil. I I would definitely have to say bring those up to him, especially Chrysostom, and a few others, and even the Protestant Reformation leaders all spoke out against the Jews, especially Martin Luther. So I definitely bring those up to him. When Ru had lived 32 years, he became the father of. I already read that. When Sarug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And after he became the father of Nahor, Sarug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he became the father of Terah. And after he became the father of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and had other sons and daughters. After Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Abraham's family. This is the account. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot, while his father Terah was still alive. The reason why I think that we ought to continue following and sticking to these genealogies is because we are all spiritual children of Abraham, all those that accept Christ. And so the promises that were given to Abraham and his descendants are given to Christians. If you deny Christ, you don't get these, because these are only things that are inheritance through Christ and no one else. But it's very important to understand these things because the Bible is built upon covenant after covenant after covenant and is fully revealed in who Christ is and what he did. Terah became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot, while his father Terah was still alive. Haran died in Ur of the Chaldees, in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Ishka. Now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. Yeah, I mean, the scripture does talk about the curse of Ham, but also the curse of Canaan. And so I do believe that it exists. Why do you ask? Here's some notes from the epic one. Genesis 1:26, probable reading of the original Hebrew text, was speaking about the earth or the land that they were upon. I don't remember that part. Can you remind me what that was? I don't think that was in scripture, but I can double check. Yes, I do know about that part. I know this story. I just Are you saying that that Noah cursed his mom? Or that Oh, okay, that's what you were referring to. I was kind of confused what you were referring to. I thought that maybe you were talking about um a curse that the mom received. No, I do not believe that because the context of that passage doesn't really give that. Um, I don't see very much probable evidence for it, but I haven't looked too much into that one. Genesis 2:5, the footnote is talking about land, also in verse 6. Genesis 2:6 is about mist. Genesis 2:7, the Hebrew for man, Adam, sounds like and may be related to the Hebrew for ground, Adamah. It is also the name Adam. See verse 20. Genesis 2:12, or good pearls. Genesis 2:13, possibly southeast Mesopotamia. Genesis 2:20, or the man. Genesis 2:21, or took part of the man's side. Genesis 2:22 is emphasizing the taken part of the man. Genesis 3:15 is talking about the seed. Genesis 3:15 switches bruise to strike, as like a bit more of a hard sounding issue. They mean the same thing. Genesis 3:20, it's talking specifically about the man. Genesis 3:20, Eve probably means living. Adam named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. All these are end notes. But let's go into the next chapter. Epic 1 is done. Time to go into Epic 2. The Wi-Fi is slow. All right. Yeah, I'm reading this off of my computer, by the way. Epic 2, the patriarchs, Israel's ancestors. God chose from among the nations of the world a man named Abraham, to whom he revealed himself. In response, Abraham chose to be God's servant. 2000 and 1500 BC. The term patriarch refers to the founder or ruler of a tribe, family, or clan. The Israelites trace their ancestry to one man, the patriarch, Abraham. Isaiah 51:2 and Hebrews 7:4 emphasize this. They laid claim to Canaan based on the covenants God made with their first three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to take possession of the land. The phrase the patriarchs eventually referred to Jacob's 12 sons as well in Acts 7, 8, and 9. Thus, among figures of the Bible, the patriarchs were the ancestors of the Israelites from Abraham to Jacob's son Joseph. Exact dates for the period in which the patriarchs lived cannot be established. The events of the patriarchal narratives in Genesis cannot be synchronized with any events outside of the Bible. As a result, scholars have suggested dates for the patriarchs ranging from 2000 BC to as late as 1200 BC. The biblical context places Abraham long before Moses in the genealogy of Exodus 6:16 through 20. Moses is the great-great-grandson of Jacob, who himself was the grandson of Abraham. The line of descent, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Koth, Amram, Moses, would set Abraham somewhere around 2000 and 1900 BC. Archaeology in the past. The Middle Bronze Age in 2000 and 1500 BC produced one of the more archaeological rewarding sites that where did it go? Sites that have been discovered in Mesopotamia. The city of Mari owed its importance to being a focal point on caravan routes, crossing the Syrian desert and linking Mari with Syria and the Mediterranean coast, as well as with Assyria and Babylonia. In addition to the Temple of Ishtar, the Mesopotamian goddess, in a ziggurat or temple tower, archaeologists found a royal place containing almost 300 rooms. Some 2,000 clay tablets, known as the Mari letters, were dug up, which shed much light on the ancient biblical world. These documents were written in Akkadian and date from the time of Hammurabi in circa 1750 BC. Some of the documents are diplomatic, correspondence between Mari's king Zimri Lim and Babylonians Hammurabi, who eventually destroyed Mari. The Mari tablets refer to terms often associated with the patriarchs. The term Habiru, found both at Mari and in the Nuzi text, has been compared to Abraham being named a Hebrew. Genesis 14:13. The semi-nomadic group called Bene Yamina at Mari bears a similar name to the Israelite name Benjamin. Mari also sheds light on the Amorites Nahor, Haran, Mari, Kotna, and Agarit. All appear as Amorite cities with Amorite kings. Another discovery related to the patriarchs dates from around the change from Middle Bronze in 2000 to 1500 BC to Late Bronze 1500 to 1200 BC. Numerous clay tablets from the city of Nuzi are thought to illuminate customs and local practices found in the patriarchal narratives. Nuzi was a Haran city, and it was sometime after 1550 BC that the Hurrians established themselves in Upper Mesopotamia and northern Syria, rapidly expanding to form the powerful kingdom of Mitanni. Exact dates for Nuzi are difficult to determine, although the Nuzi tablets are usually dated between 1400 and 1330 BC. The similarities of social and legal customs between the Nuzi texts and the patriarchal stories have led some scholars to place the patriarchs themselves after 1550 BC. The Nuzi customs, however, may reflect social conditions of centuries before Nuzi, as well as those of much later times in the first millennium, rather than demonstrating a date for the patriarchs. The Nuzi texts provide insights into cultural customs that help us understand daily life in the second millennium BC. The peoples and groups. The dynasty of Sargon of Agade lasted for only about a century before it declined. Mesopotamia experienced a period of anarchy, partly caused by invasions of the Gutians, foreigners from the Zagros mountains. The strongest dynasty to emerge during this unstable time was the third dynasty of Ur, founded by Ur-Nammu about 2112 BC. The connections that existed between Ur and various Syrian cities from one possible setting for Abraham's journeys. Eventually, Ur declined as well. The Ur Empire collapsed with the invasion of the Elamites, bringing an end to Sumerian civilization. Tribes of Semitic peoples called Amorites migrated into Mesopotamia from the west in large numbers, capturing major regions. They established Amorite dynasties in various city-states. Both Shamshi Adad I in circa 1813 to 1781 BC, ruler of Ashur, and Hammurabi of Babylon in 1792 to 1750 BC were Amorite kings. In Egypt, a period of decline and civil war ended gradually during the Middle Kingdom. King Amenemhet I of Thebes in 1963 to 1934 BC convinced the princes of the land to give their allegiance to him as the true heir of to Egypt's throne. Another pharaoh, Sesostris III, in 1862 to 1843 BC, established a central government by restraining the powers of Egypt's provincial rulers and families. Unity in Egypt continued for more than 200 years. Eventually, however, the country experienced a second period of weakness in which rival dynasties competed for control of limited areas. The most important of these dynasties was the Hyksos, who gained control of Lower Egypt, establishing a capital at Avaris toward the end of the Middle Bronze Age. King Kamous of Thebes broke the power of the Hyksos, and his younger brother Ahmose eventually drove them from Egypt. The biblical literature. The second part of the book of Genesis, chapters 12 through 50, tells the stories of Israel's patriarchs. The events from the lives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, chapters 12 through 38, take place primarily in Canaan, although Abraham originated in Mesopotamia, Ur, and Haran. The traditions concerning these ancestors are grouped into cycles of stories around Abraham, 12:1 through 25:18, and around Jacob, 25:19 through 36:43. Isaac appears in the Abraham and Jacob cycles, with much of his story in Genesis 26. Abraham enters into covenant with God and is given the promise that he and his descendants will become a blessing to all humanity. In the stories of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah, and Rachel and Joseph, the fulfillment of God's promises takes concrete form. The life of Joseph in chapters 37 through 50 is set primarily in Egypt, and in that foreign place we see God's unfailing providence and his determination to keep his promise to Abraham. The changing of the empires. After about 2200 BC, the great empires of the early Bronze Age fell apart. Politically, instability and unrest spread throughout Egypt and Mesopotamia at the close of this age and the beginning of the Middle Bronze Age in 2000 to 1500 BC. In Egypt, the Old Kingdom was followed by over a century of political and social disarray. During this time, known in Egyptian history as the First Intermediate Period, in 2160 to 2010 BC, Badunis from Asia infiltrated the Nile Delta. Civil strife between Egypt's city-states ended in 2040 when Mentuhotep II from Thebes reunified the land and began the prosperous and stable Middle Kingdom, which lasted until about 1786 BC. In Mesopotamia, no great empire arose to replace the third dynasty of Ur after the city-state fell in 2004 BC. Smaller kingdoms such as Isin, Larsa, Assyria, Mari, and Babylon took turns dominating each other for brief periods. The greatest of these was the kingdom of Hammurabi I of Babylon, 1792 to 1750 BC, whose famous law code parallels many of the Israelite laws. Hammurabi eventually brought all of Mesopotamia under Babylonian control. Even this kingdom was brief, though declining during the rule of Hammurabi's son. The instability of the time resulted partly from the appearance throughout the ancient Near East of a new ethnic group, the Amuru, or Amorites. This large group of Semitic people had personal names and customs that resembled those of biblical Hebrews. Their influence was so pervasive that even some Mesopotamian kings had Amorite names. After 2000 BC, Amorites inhabited Palestine. Some settled in villages and established their own city-states. Others lived as semi-nomadic shepherds, and still others lived on the fringes of society as warlike outcasts. Such outsiders, referred to as Habiru, usually served as slaves or mercenaries to others, but on occasion fought their own battles. Amorites worshipped many gods, but each city or clan identified its own particular deity. In Mesopotamia, in cities influenced by the Amorites, there even appeared prophets of these local gods, using language very similar to that of the much later Old Testament prophets, away from the cities among the semi-nomadic shepherds. Great stress was given to the god of the clan's forefathers. Worship usually involved animal sacrifice, but child sacrifice was also common during this time. Now I'm gonna go through the next part in the next live. I have to get back to work, so I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. If you guys didn't get to watch the whole thing, go back and go through the whole situation, the whole live, and you'll get a good amount of the information. Tomorrow I'm gonna hopefully live stream a little bit longer. Tomorrow is going to be specifically about the transition point between the first epic and the second epic, and between this information about who the people were into who Abraham was, Abram being an Amorite. And we'll explain that further in tomorrow's live stream. I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. I will be prepared tomorrow. And let's end with prayer. And I hope you guys have a great one. Let's go. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the blessings. Thank you for dying on the cross for our sins. Lord, I want to bless all these people on here with your word, but I also want them to be blessed by you. I hope that they got something good out of this. If they didn't or weren't convinced of the truth, that they were at least be able to accept that there is historical backing to the Christian faith and to the Bible as a whole. And I hope that this gave some good insights to them, and that they will continue to grow in whatever faith that they may be having. I hope that this laid seed in them, that they are able to come and become a fruition into a beautiful tree of your faith and be grafted into the tree of Christ. And it's on your precious, holy, and powerful name that I pray. Amen. Have a great one, guys.